Target ikhanda amabullet akufanele bemamncanyana.
In South Africa, the taxi industry isn't just transport, it's a kingdom without a king. But every empire has its rulers and its assassins. For decades, South Africa's taxi industry has been both a lifeline and a weapon. A weapon used by men who answer to no one, not the police, not even the government. Every province in South Africa has its own network, powerful organizations that run like well-oiled money-making machines. This industry generates billions in revenue each year. Some of these taxi networks are as organized as corporations, complete with bosses, treasurers, and their own enforcers. Every day, millions of commuters step into these minibus taxis. Behind the steering wheels and flashing hazards lies a danger of war, a war over routes, a war over money, a war where bullets decide business deals. Because in the South African taxi industry, law doesn't drive, power does. But how and where did all this massive cash flow, complete power, and chaos all begin? Before we continue, smash the subscribe button below and ring the notification bell so you stay up to date about every video that we release here on this channel. My name is Slim. Let's get into it. The South African taxi industry makes an amount of an estimated 100 billion rands each year. This massive industry is a significant part of the economy, with more than 250,000 vehicles, 60 million passengers each day, and a large number of employees. But a big percentage of this money is untaxed due to the industry's informal and cash-based nature. Even though billions of rands are being generated each year, the drivers themselves get paid between 6,000 to 8,000 rands, depending on their routes or the number of trips they make. So to keep working and earning, taxi drivers often join associations, but the problem is the taxi owners who employ these drivers are the bosses of these associations, and they are the ones who often get the majority share of the revenue. So add that with the stiff competition for a limited number of taxi routes, the extreme poverty, the fear of being attacked, and the fragile relationship the taxi business has with the government of South Africa, plus the powerful taxi owners who need to protect their revenue flow. Then you get the perfect mix for extreme violence where taxi associations fight over territory and passengers.
Rival taxi associations have been fighting for ownership of a busy route. Confrontations have raged for years. And it's got worse, with more than 80 people killed.
In a country where the taxi industry transports a significant portion of South Africa's commuters, with some estimating that it serves over 60% of public transport users, getting caught up in taxi wars is a likely experience that can result in death. And when the taxi wars break out, sometimes passengers get caught in between. Hitmen are hired to take out rival taxi drivers or owners, passengers are intimidated, rival minibus taxis get burned, other public transport systems like buses and trains get affected as well. And the government doesn't even bother to get involved, besides releasing a statement of condemnation for the violence and general disruptions.
We are disturbed by the troubling events because of violence associated with the taxi strike, and we strongly condemn the violence and the destruction.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut the fuck up!
And in South Africa, minibus taxis are only known for three things: the overloading of passengers, bad driving, and extreme violence.
Threatening me with a hammer. Now he's thrown it at my car.
But how and when did the taxi industry begin in South Africa? During apartheid, black South Africans were subject to segregation laws that separated them from white South Africans in almost every aspect of life. The apartheid government provided public transportation for white South Africans only. Black South Africans had limited options. They were forced to rely on inadequate and unreliable modes of transportation. Meanwhile, in the townships, informal modes of transport like bicycles, wheelbarrows, and pushcarts were becoming common. So, in the late 1970s, black South Africans had their own answer. A new form of transportation emerged in the townships, the minibus taxi. These taxis were small vans that could carry up to 14 to 16 passengers and were operated by private individuals. The taxis were cheaper and more efficient than the government-run buses and were able to navigate the narrow and winding streets of the townships. The minibus taxi industry grew rapidly, thousands of drivers and operators joining the trade. So, in 1979, the first taxi association was formed. the South African Black Taxi Association, or SABTA. As the industry grew in political and economic importance, rival organizations began to emerge, such as the South African Long Distance Taxi Associations, or SALTA. Then, in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, despite opposition from the apartheid government, which saw the industry as a threat to its control over the transportation sector, the government attempted to regulate the industry by imposing strict licensing requirements and cracking down on unlicensed operators. However, the regulations were difficult to enforce, and many operators continued to operate without licenses. But the National Party government had a plan to stop all the illegal black taxi operators. So, in the late 1980s, Transport Policy and the Transport Regulation Act effectively legalized minibus taxis overnight. This change led to explosive and uncontrolled growth and fierce competition for lucrative routes, ranks, and often resulting in violence, aka the taxi wars. This was the beginning of the taxi wars, and when they began, it seemed like the government's plan worked. Instead of them having to deal with the non-white taxi owners, they legalized them and then let them take each other out. So when the regulations were lifted, a major conflict erupted, notably between the Langa Guguletu Enyanga Taxi Association, or Lagunya, and the Western Cape Black Taxi Association, or WEPTA. The first taxi war claimed hundreds of lives. By 1991, the level of violence increased significantly over the country. However, the Lagunya and WEPTA taxi associations merged to form CODETA, or Cape Organization for Democratic Taxi Association. And it seemed like things would be peaceful, until arguments within the CODETA organization happened that led to some breaking off and forming a new taxi association called CATA, or Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association. The two organizations fought for territory and routes. By 1993, the taxi violence peaked as community destabilization intensified in the run-up to the 1994 elections. So, by October 1993, the South African police identified the taxi wars as one of the major causes of violence in the country. And the violence escalated rapidly into the post-apartheid period, even though some expected it to die after the new democratic government was elected. The violence was bad. It claimed hundreds of lives, including taxi owners, drivers, rank marshals, and innocent commuters who got caught in the crossfire.
We had just finished parking when I started hearing a heavy volume of gunshots, probably coming out from an automatic rifle. So what I could only do was to put my head down. And for a short while, they stopped. When they stopped, all what we could do was to run away for our lives.
So, in 1995, after the ANC had won the election the previous year, the government was feeling the pressure, so they had to do something. So that's when they established the National Taxi Task Team to find a solution. The Task Team's 1996 report recommended re-regulation, but the taxi organizations were too powerful by that point. They pushed back against this idea. So, by the late 1990s, violence continued, with on and off again conflicts occurring, and the government's efforts to impose control kept getting rejected. And then in the mid-2000s, new modes of transport were introduced. The introduction of bus rapid transit or BRT systems in major cities, and later the arrival of e-hailing vehicles like Uber and Bolt in 2013. These new transportation systems introduced new forms of competition, often leading to clashes and further violence.
So the gunning down of an e-hailing service driver and the torching of two vehicles on Wednesday evening in what is suspected to be ongoing tensions between taxi operators and e-hailing service drivers.
If taxi drivers can come to attack us, we are ready to attack them. We are sick and tired of it.
But why should I be killed? Because I am driving an e-hailing. You are a taxi owner.
Hitmen known as Inkabi became the go-to solutions for the taxi owners and drivers if they wanted to eliminate the competition. These hitmen get paid for every hit they undertake. Their prices often depend on how high up the food chain their target is.
The ordinary Saturday night goes horribly wrong. Three men approach this house. They're seen being let in by a young boy and open fire, killing 42-year-old Alin Diosi in full view of family and friends.
Ukhuluma ngami, ngikhuluma ngekaba. Umuntu odubula engamsukelile umuntu. Ngisuke ngiphunya nguwe ukuthi suxakekile kakhulu. Kodwa umsebenzi weNkabi noma iNkabi umuntu ongathi unesibindi ngoba umuntu okwazi ukuhlala naye xoxa naye kodwa azi ukuthi uzokushaya ikhanda futhi.
So, when you see a taxi driver driving like a menace on public roads, remember that the taxi driver's wage isn't enough for their necessities. So in order for them to make more money, they drive like madmen to meet the daily target set by the taxi owner, which they must give them at the end of each day. And the more trips they make, the more money they get. So with more than enough trips, they can even get a little bit extra for themselves. While often framed purely as a fight over taxi routes or territory, the violence is deeply rooted in broader socio-economic issues like high unemployment and the lack of other viable economic opportunities for black entrepreneurs, making the taxi industry a desperate and violently contested avenue for wealth accumulation. The South African taxi industry isn't just transport. It's a reflection of the nation's struggle between order and survival. It's not just wheels on the road. It's an empire that was built on opportunity, freedom, and power. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.